The first thing I wanted to ask about was what is the benefit to taxpayers and parents to have lobbying done on behalf of school districts?
Yeah, absolutely. Bexar County Education Coalition is focused on empowerment for our districts, both for all parents, students, teachers, administrators. So what we're providing is a bigger and a greater awareness of what's going on in Austin. And we're making sure that our legislators, our elected officials in Austin have a full and comprehensive awareness of what's going on in our school districts. So, for an organization like ours, part of our job is to talk about the impact of policy on what's going on in the classroom. In order for me to do that, that requires me talking to elected officials and to ensure that everything is transparent. That requires to register as a lobbyist. That's what lobbying is to talk on and about policy with elected officials, while also representing the interest of our teachers and our school districts.
And you're probably asked by other people as well. Um, Good public school money go toward lobbying?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. The majority of the funding for public schools is determined at the state level. So the amount our teachers get paid, the amount that goes to school programs, the kind of pressure that is put on our children when it comes to high stake exams, all of those things that impact our kids and our teachers every day largely are decided at the Capitol. And so, in order for our elected officials and our school districts to have that direct connection, I do think that there is importance in having in our school kids and our teachers and our administrators having representation, having people who are talking about what's going on in classrooms, rather than just looking at statewide averages or larger statewide statistics. San Antonio and the Bexar County area specifically have a very unique story to tell, and the kinds of robust programs that are run throughout our districts, as well as the needs that we have. We have one of the biggest economically segregated metropolitan areas in the country. And so for us to ensure that our school children and our kiddos have what they need, our elected officials have to be aware of what's going on in classrooms every day. Our teachers and our students and our district and campus leaders, as many of your viewers and others know, work 60, 80 plus hours a week. And so coming up to Austin and being here throughout the 140 days of session is difficult. And so my job is to ensure that the voices of what's going on in our classrooms are elevated and raised here in Austin. I think as a taxpayer, as a public school mom, I want to ensure that our elected officials have the full picture of what's going on in our classrooms and that they feel well represented in Austin. And so I think part of that is ensuring that our school districts, one, are aware of what's going on. So part of my job is informing them of what's going on with policy, but also for me to inform elected officials about what's happening in our classrooms.
What kinds of issues are you advocating on?
Our top issue is funding. While our property taxpayers have seen their property tax bills go up, that does not determine how much money our school districts receive. That is determined based on a formula that is decided here via legislation or sometimes appropriation in the state budget. And so even as our property tax dollars are going up, and we're seeing more families being stretched thin because of that or because of the increase of inflation, our school districts are not receiving those additional dollars. Everything is put through a formula. And that determines the budget that our school districts receive. The start of that formula, that what's called the basic allotment, has remained the same since 2019. And I know that just as being having kids at home and also owning a home, all of my costs, right? Grocery bills, light bills, everything has gone up pretty significantly since 2019. Same impacts are happening in our school districts. We have to put in fuel into our buses. We have to make sure our kids have books and supplies. We provide insurance for all of our public school employees. All of those costs have gone up, but the formula or the amount that we have for our maintenance and operation, for what we operate our school districts on, has remained largely unchanged since 2019. So my job is to talk about the impact, the real impact on students and on programs, on the size of our classroom, how that impacts teacher to student ratio, for example, or our ability to keep schools open, or give adequate teacher pay raises. While some of our districts have given pay raises, they've really only been to keep up with cost of living expenses. When we know that teachers are largely underpaid, in fact, as a nation, our teachers are underpaid around $7,000 compared to other states. So all of those things really center on funding and how we can both protect taxpayers and keep those property tax cuts that we know the governor is supportive of, but also ensure that we have a robust school funding system that provides the best education for kids.
Are you lobbying about school vouchers, school choice?
We believe the Bexar County Education Coalition has been very upfront to say that when the state is spending public dollars, public taxpayer dollars, that we want to ensure that anybody who receives those dollars is accountable for any academics or any academic performance, but also their fiscal responsibility. And so in our legislative agenda, we've said that anytime the public dollars, taxpayer dollars, are being given to an entity, we want to see adequate accountability for whatever entity receives those dollars. We know that current discussions have the education savings accounts at a fairly large dollar amount that our taxpayers are going to pay for. And so just like we have to post our budgets and our salaries and remain very transparent and open to our community members, we think there should be parity on both sides to anybody receiving those taxpayer dollars.
Do you think some parents and taxpayers don't want their money to go to lobby?
So repeat the question. It cut out a little bit on my end.
Do you think some parents and taxpayers don't want their money going towards lobby?
I think that the school districts have their parent advisory councils, many of which I speak to. They report to their board about how they're spending their funding. One of the great things about public schools and ISDs is that all of our school board meetings are publicly available and transparent. Anytime we have a budget adoption, or an ISD rather has a budget adoption, they go through this spending and all of the things that are included in this spending. And so I know that there has been feedback and involvement from parents to say, we either do want more awareness of what's going on in Austin, or we want this particular part of a legislative agenda to be present for us. Or we see benefit about having, say, more access and transparency around curriculum. And so our districts are largely responsive and will continue to be responsive and want additional feedback from their parents about how they're investing their dollars to serve their kids.
anything else before we wrap up you think is important on this topic?
I think it's really important for more folks to really understand the difference between what's happening on your property tax bill and what's going on in Austin when it comes to paying for our public schools. The other thing that I would say is largely public schools, and we know how important our neighborhood schools and our public schools are to our community. Across the state of Texas, not just in Bexar County and San Antonio, but across the state of Texas, largely public schools are very well supported. We see this in poll after poll, and we see this no matter what side of the aisle you're on. We all know how important our public schools are to the future of this great state. And so I hope that folks continue to know that any amount of information and transparency for our kids, for our teachers, for our educators is going to be important to ensure that we have a strong public school system moving forward.